that's taking them from their home in Mount Pearl to Carbonear, and in a couple of weeks, Dorset in England. Their goal is to stand on the homestead of the first Ballam to immigrate to Newfoundland. His name was Charles Ballam. He died in 1861, and his descendants are here now in the On The Go studio. Good afternoon to you both.
Good afternoon, Ted.
Glad to be here. So what do you know now about Charles Ballam?
We know that he arrived in Newfoundland after setting sail from Dorset. It was 1829, Andrew?
The earliest record we have of him in Newfoundland dates to 1830, which is him witnessing a marriage in Carbonear.
What do you know about his life here?
Well, we know that he was a fisherman, and he was very involved in the Labrador fishery, and it became sort of a family tradition within the Ballam family to become involved in that fishery, as two of his sons, including my ancestor and dad's as well, were both involved in that fishery as well. He specifically had a settlement up there, I think it was called Red Point, something like that. He owned a piece of property that we have been trying to locate, and where its modern-day location would be. And so we've taken to looking through various old documents, and we found that it seems to be somewhere in Lower Street in Carbonear, which as far as we know, still exists today.
But you don't know for sure exactly where it was?
No, we don't know the exact location. They wouldn't have addresses and stuff back then. It was just settlements.
And there's no hand-drawn map from back then saying the Ballam property.
And the interesting thing is about the map, I actually done an internship at the Rooms recently, working at the archives, and I actually inquired at the head archivist there whether there was a map of Carbonear Harbour Grace around that time period, and she said, well, there is one of Harbour Grace, but that probably unfortunately does not include Carbonear. So that's unfortunately that lead never ended up coming up with anything, but ultimately we don't know the exact location as of right now.
So what is Charles Ballam to you and Andrew?
Well, to me, he's my great-great-great-great-grandfather, 4 grades there, and to Dad had be 3 grades. So he's my ancestor from 7 generations ago, and Dad's from 6 generations, to give an easier picture.
You're the guy who drew the family tree. How old were you when you started?
Well, I wouldn't exactly say drawn. I've used the program for the past 7 years. So
You were 11.
I was 11 years old. That would have been 7 years. And I started getting interested in family history. I mean, if you were to talk to my mom about this, I mean, she would probably point to us going out to graveyards when I was only about, while I was a little kid. I used to be very interested in dates and names of people, right? So, she found that when she took me to graveyards and stuff, I would go through the gravestones and read out, the names and the dates of the people that were there. And, I used to just look at these and think, these were people just like me, all the way back, when they were still alive. And it used to fascinate me. And you would see all these, family plots, and, it just got you thinking, right? I've always been a bit of a thinker. So, eventually, that got me to, when I was about 11 years old, I started thinking, what about the names and dates of people in my own family? And what would they be like? So, eventually, I got interested in doing research on that, so I started from what I knew, which at the start of it wasn't very much, especially my dad's side. Dad barely knew the names of his own grandparents. And using a lot of very useful resources like Newfoundland's Grand Banks, Ancestry.com, Family Search, I've found quite a bit of information, and eventually, after a while, it took me a while to get the connection, but we've discovered Charles. It was our immigrant ancestor, and the first record of him, of course, as I've said, was 1830 in November, specifically.
Andrew clearly has the bug, Doug. What's in this for you? What's brought you on this quest?
Well, I'm just following Andrew's lead, frankly. Andrew graduated high school this year, and so for his high school trip, he wanted to go to England. And then we sat down one evening and discussed, well, what are we going to do over there? And then the quest just basically appeared to both of us.
We've been doing summer trips for a little while. As me and him, we've started a tradition that every summer we go out somewhere in Newfoundland and camp out there for a couple of days. So, because I've graduated high school actually this year, and we also had a grad trip planned ever since I was 3. Originally it was Egypt, but, the situation there. So, we've discussed other locations as to where the grad trip would be, and I was like, England. one of the first things that came to my mind was England, because a lot of our ancestors ultimately come from that area, and I was like, it'd be very interesting to go there for genealogy, right? And just to, get a bigger connection with our past. And so Dad, we thought over it for a bit. We discussed the trip a lot, and we talked about, what would make this trip interesting. And eventually, Dad came on the idea that a bit of a spark that it was to visit and find the original homestead of our ancestor that came over to Newfoundland, Charles Ballam. If we could be as close as we could to that property, then it would be a surreal experience. And from that point on, we were both very excited about that trip, and that's when the quest really began.
Do you know where that is yet in Dorset, or is that something you've got to uncover when you get there?
That's something we have yet to uncover. We know it used to be somewhere in Christchurch, and as far as we can tell, the Ballams did not have a consistent homestead there. They moved around a lot in that area. From what my research has indicated, the family seems to have had a homestead in a community called Winterbourne, Kingston, but we're not sure we haven't precisely located that either, since it seems the family there has since moved away.
I was going to ask, are there any Ballams in the phone book?
We've searched. I don't think there has been any in Christchurch for a while, unfortunately.
Our next step is to approach the various historical and genealogical societies in the region there, and just start asking questions. And I'm quite hopeful, seeing as we found the very street where Charles lived when he arrived here. I'm confident that we'll be successful in our quest.
Especially seeing as, people in England are very interested in genealogy, and all the genealogists I've interacted with in my 7 years of doing this have always been very helpful.
And they seem to have a ridiculous number of records still tucked away over there.
Yeah, they definitely do. Especially in England.
Good luck in England. Let us know how it turns out. Before I let you go, though, if there's anybody listening to us who knows anything about ancient Carbonear,
or England and Christchurch or genealogy or any resources that would be beneficial to us, then just toss in any little nugget of info we can.
All right, I'll give out our contact information. If somebody gets a hold of me, I'll send them your way.
Perfect.
Thanks for coming by.
Thank you, Ted.
Great to be here.
That is Doug and Andrew Ballam. If you have any information to help them on their quest, call Talkback. Let me know. 1-800-465-6846 is the number to dial. I'll send that on to them, or you can send an email to me and I'll forward that as well. Our address is onthego@cbc.ca.